for my pen
How
here.
long do you have for your phone call with them?
Well, I think I put down, I may have put down it either, I have to look, 30 minutes or an hour. We didn't, I was so new at this. I mean, the sponsors I got before were very small for my book talk. So this is, this is a national organization, American Heart Association.
Yeah.
So I don't remember whether I put an hour or half an hour. But
Right.
so the goal for the show, and I mean, it's really hard to know how much money because this is just like an initial dating call, right?
Yeah.
And then
exactly.
how can we interweave you, Charmaine, with this?
Well, I'm not sure because
I mean, I know you can't come on Tuesday, but I meant, I don't know, when you work with your clients, they're your clients. It's not like you're being called in as a hired gun to come in and negotiate or whatever, right? I mean,
I'm usually like teaching people the skills and helping them with the strategy. Just because, for example, if this sponsorship was something like the one we just did for our movie, the being on 13 to 15 calls for someone to hire me to do that, that's a big expense. And then it might be a no, right?
Right. So
like the sponsor might say no. So that's why, that's why we've chosen this kind of approach to more teach people.
Right.
Because the work that goes, like for a big sponsor, like they're a big brand. So the bigger the brand, the longer it takes, the harder it is. Like that's just the way it is. So with a big brand like that organization, who probably has $1 million sponsorships that they get for their organization, so they have and I'm talking about what they get, not what they give for sponsorship. But when they get sponsorship, a company like that, they probably have brands that are giving them $500,000, $1 million a year. Like that's how they support their organization. So they're going to be probably very interested in well, and I don't want to make an assumption. So I would ask them, like, I would say this is going to be your first dating conversation or your first getting to know you call. So I'd love to learn more about you. I've done some research on the website, but I always find it so much more interesting hearing from the organizations. And, by the way, I see you've got a show that you've started. Congratulations. I'd love to learn more about that. Aaron also has a show he's been doing for quite some time. And I'm not sure if the audience is the same or different, but who is your audience? So because they might be targeting a specifically different audience than Aaron. And there may or may not be ways to collaborate, or they may have the exact same audience that Aaron's going after.
They said they were interested. If you want, I can read you the email. So I thought, because we had reached out to them about a year ago. So just like you said, it takes time. They are aware of Aaron. They are aware of the book. And I thought, now they're copying the idea with their own show.
Right.
So what's the point then, other than maybe getting some of Aaron's audience to come to their show? Or is it that
with them saying that they're interested in connecting, you can always start the call with, because we don't really know what they're interested in. They've only said they're interested, right? Is that right?
Right. I can look up what. Do you want me to read what they wrote?
Yeah, read it to me again so it's in my head.
Yeah, because let me just see what they wrote again, because I don't remember the wording, but I just remember feeling very happy.
Yeah, that's great to land that call. It's a big group.
Here's what they said. Let's see. Okay. I absolutely would love to catch up. In fact, we have an opportunity that viewers of Stroke TV would likely be interested in coming up next week. The international, this was done in March. The International Stroke Conference will be opening up a consumer experience that is all virtual and begins March 17th. I've attached a news release on this topic, which we will be sharing tomorrow in our newsroom. Registration are limited to 500 per session and expected to fill quickly. So what happened was I didn't get back to her in time. That was March 11th. And then I wrote her back saying, I'm so sorry, I haven't gotten back to you. And I mentioned Aaron doing 4 interviews a week. has a impressive lineup of guests. He's actually booked through August. I didn't put that in here.
Yeah.
And I said we'd love to explore the idea of collaboration. Stroke TV Foundation is also a nonprofit, which it wasn't before, and their work is going towards supporting the self-expression of stroke survivors across the United States and beyond.
Awesome.
And so then they said, yes, I'm available. So they said they wanted to catch up. We have an opportunity for viewers, meaning they like the same audience as Stroke TV, which is stroke survivors. And obviously, Aaron has cultivated a worldwide audience. So I don't know, and Aaron's very happy to compensate, whatever. We don't know how long this process would take.
Right.
Or, or what would be the next step in putting something together. I know I wrote down the questions you said I could ask them.
Yeah, I would just, if honestly, and how long do you have with them? How long is your call?
We'll figure anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes.
Okay. So, so I typically, often I just say, should we do a round of quick introductions? And then that way, who's who and what role they play.
Right.
That's important to know.
Yeah.
And then the other piece that I would do early off is just say, I'm just delighted that you took our call. Congratulations on your new show. And of course, you're aware that Aaron also has a show that he's been doing for 4 years. I'd love to hear more about what you're up to. And that's exactly all I would say. I'd leave it wide open like that. They'll tell you what they want, they'll tell you what they want you to know about the show. And then if they don't tell you clearly the audience, I would ask, who's your target audience? And do you have a secondary audience? Who is that? And what's the goals around your show? What is the goals? What is the impact that they're looking to make with their show? And then I would say, I was really excited to hear that you had interest in having a conversation with us, with your email saying you'd be interested in talking about potential collaboration with the show. And I just thought I'd put it over to you first to see if when you had read the email, if there were ideas that were popping up for you that you wanted to start the conversation with, or if you had any specific goals for our conversation today.
Oh, so, I see.
That's a great way to start it because, they've agreed to a meeting with you. Right. And that way you're able to more quickly kind of get to the agenda, like to get on the same page of what you're going to talk about. And you're learning about their company or their organization. And then they'll probably ask you and Aaron to talk about your show. So, just really briefly, he's been doing this for years. He's got an incredibly dedicated audience around the world. This audience continues to grow. Aaron engages with his audience through not only through the interviews, but also he's very active on LinkedIn, very active on other social platforms. He has a nonprofit organization and is really committed to helping stroke survivors and their families around the globe. And that's as tight as I would do it.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
That's how I would kind of frame it. And then I just stop for a minute to see if they have questions. Like I try, sometimes I don't even have something to fill it with. I just kind of let that linger. And then often they'll say, oh, you mentioned, and they'll go back to something that you mentioned, or they'll ask you a question. And if there's that awkward silence and no one asks a question, you could then say, it sounds like one of the areas of synergy is the fact that we both have a very closely aligned audience that we're trying to serve, right? Yeah. And, we would welcome a conversation around, is there some ways to create synergy around this? Because I wouldn't put ideas out yet, but because it all depends on what they say. I could say an idea right now, and based on what you learn on the call, this idea now sucks. It wouldn't work, if you know what I mean. So that's why I'm very careful about not just putting out a whole bunch of ideas on that first phone call, because the ideas depend on what information they share with you. So for example, if they were to say, for the next year, we're actually driving 90% of our marketing efforts towards our heart patients, not our stroke patients. right? Like, let's just pretend that's what they said. Then the idea I just had in my head a minute ago actually went out the door because it's like, okay, so it's only like 10% of the audience is shared right now. But is there a way that what we're doing could actually support what you're doing? Because who knows, like, could
Mhm.
Aaron's show
Right,
be the stroke part of it,
right.
right?
Yes, it's
For this,
true.
I mean, but I wouldn't pose that, like, I'm just giving you an idea. But would I say that? I don't know if I would say that because it would depend on what they've said in real life, whether I would put that idea forward, if that
But
makes sense.
I love that question. I don't think it's a pressured question. It's a very open question.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll give you an example. When I was talking to one of the banks the other day, I had all these ideas of what I could bring up, if they ask me something like, why did you call us? Or what thoughts did you have? I wanted to have some ideas that I thought of. And all of the ideas except one were not going to fly once I heard them talk about their project.
Oh,
Right? So I didn't bring them up because I learned they don't invest in movies. They don't invest in video creation. They don't invest in events that go outside their boundaries.
oh,
So it's like, okay, so what they're interested in are only these type of live events. So all the other ideas that had written down, I didn't even bring up because I already know they're a no, right? So what I
wow.
did focus on is I said, so I heard one of the things that's really important to you is live events where your employees can get involved. Let's talk about that because we're going to be doing a lot of live events. So I focused on the one point of synergy.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's the problem that often happens in sponsorship is we create our whole list of ideas and then we're like wanting to get them out there. Meanwhile, they've given us clues that some of the ideas we've written down from our own head may not work because what they share with you. So that's what I always try and you know um, stop the process. Like, I'll give you another idea, another thought. We're working with one international company right now, and we're looking at doing a contest with students. And so I would never in a million years have thought to ask this company this because I have no idea that they actually have a wall in their every location across around the world. They have a wall to showcase community projects, which I didn't know because that's not on the website anywhere. It's like if you haven't been in their store, you wouldn't know this. So we had some ideas of what we were going to present, but when they started talking about, oh, your art contest, could this be something we support? Because in every store around the world, we actually have a wall dedicated to community happenings. What if we were to take the wall for a month and showcase your contest contributors
Wow.
around the world? I would never have thought of asking that. So it was like every other idea that I was going to ask them, I parked it because this was more
Wow.
important to them, right? So that's why part of the process on these calls is you can prepare a list of ideas that might be surfacing for you, but what you share with them is going to depend on what they share with you,
I see. Yeah,
right?
I was thinking of like it's like a ping pong game or a tennis match.
Yeah,
You hit the ball one way, you have to follow it in
yeah,
that direction versus this direction.
yeah,
And what I'm also hearing is you don't bring up anything with money at
yeah,
all.
yeah,
When does that ever happen? I mean, there must, at some point, there's going
yeah.
to be a conversation.
Well, and sometimes we're working with one partner right now that's an international company that I think they probably won't give money, but what they can do is worth probably, I don't know, $500,000 in kind, what they're able to do. So um
Oh, I see.
like what they're able to do in kind would probably cost me 250,000 to buy. So that, I don't know if they'll come on as a cash sponsor, and we haven't even ventured down that path yet. They'll probably contribute something, but all of the things that they're willing to do, like they're willing to host events at their expense. So like that's huge for me. I
Wow.
don't have to pay for that,
Yeah,
right?
that's very generous.
And market them and have tickets available at their store locations. And so that's
Oh,
so money may or may not come up. A lot of times what'll happen is once it seems like there's synergy and a bit of a plan, they'll generally ask for a proposal. um, but these are questions that I start to because I don't know who's on the call. I think the people that I did look up their names, and they're high level people. They're in the
Yes,
communications
Alexan,
department.
Callahan, and
Yep.
Toya.
Yeah, I looked them up, and they're both decision makers. So that's why I would, really at the beginning just talk about, I was really delighted for your interest in getting on this call. And I'd love to learn, you had some interest in this conversation. Were there any questions for us that we can handle right off the bat, or were there ideas or thoughts that you had that we should talk about right off the bat? And as well, I want to hear more about your brand and more about your new show. So that's a great way to kind of volley it back to them, right?
But so you mentioned that they may ask for a proposal if they're interested, but I also remember from our prior interviews that you said you discussed the money, I think, before you put the proposal together, right?
Right, which is not going to happen on your first call.
No.
If it does, it's a no, is what it, like, that's what I've learned. If they ask you for a proposal on the first call, it's probably a no. Like, how can you do a proposal with 35 minutes of information?
Oh, I
Like,
see.
you just can't. That's like
even
saying
an hour. What if it was an hour? Still, it's not enough.
yeah. No, like, do you even know the decision-making process? Do you know who decides on sponsorship?
No.
Do you, right? So all of these questions, it's sort of like what happens with sponsorship. What I had this question from a client the other day. So she was getting pressure from her boss, the decision maker, to actually, so they had 1 20-minute call with a sponsor. That's it, 20 minutes. And so her boss was saying, do the proposal, go pitch, ask for 25,000 minimum, go pitch. So the staff phoned me and I said, ooh, like I said, do you know what their corporate values are? No, other than the website. Okay. Do you know who the decision maker is? No. Okay. Do you know who, like, when their decision making process takes place? No. Do you know what other kind of projects that they've sponsored? No. Do you know what they value around collaboration and sponsorship? No. Do you know that they can even do sponsorship? No. Okay. So what you're doing here. So I said, okay, so you've answered no to like 7 of the 20 questions. So I said, this is what you're doing. Because I couldn't get away. She was trying to get her to explain this to her
throwing
boss.
paint on a wall, right?
Well, exactly. And her boss is like, just get the proposal. We're going to pitch them. We're going to pitch them. And she's like, she was getting more and more nervous. And she said 25,000, like, minimum, they got to come in. And so the staff was trying to say, we don't even have enough information. So I said to her, here's what you're trying to do. You're trying to talk to someone who you don't even really know them. So like, hey, Mary and Bob, I've got this really great granola bar that I'd love to sell you. I know your kids will love it. Oh, well, we don't have kids. Oh, okay. Well, I know your partner will love it. I'm divorced. Oh, well, I know it's got like fruit and nuts and chocolate. I'm allergic to nuts. So like, what you're doing is you're trying to sell them this granola bar. And there's all these objections because we didn't have the information. So I said, when you go in and pitch them with $25,000, you're trying to pitch a granola bar that you know nothing about, their allergies. Do they even like granola? Have they bought it before? Do they have a favorite granola bar? And I'm using this example because it's an easy one to get your head around. Whereas if they have 2 or 3 more calls, then they might know the person has a peanut allergy and the person doesn't have children. And so maybe the granola bar pitch is not the route to go. So I use that, like, and I take people out of it just to kind of paint the example of that's what it's like when you're trying to like pitch sponsorship without having all the information. So the story went on that they had the call. She was able to convince her boss not to do a $25,000 proposal. And it was really good that they did, because on the second meeting, it came out, we have 0 money.
Oh.
Would have been a no right off the bat. No, probably no further conversation. We have no money. We had a really bad experience the last time that we did a sponsorship. We didn't get ROI. We're not sure that we want to invest again. So now it's like, how can we build trust with you?
Right.
So they found out all this information. And what they were able to identify was all these ways that this company could work with them in kind, which their in-kind contribution is probably 50 to 75,000. It's not money, it's in kind. And now they have a way to work together. But had she gone in and pitched that granola bar or pitched that 25,000, it would have been, oh, Like it would have felt like that. Oh, what do you mean? Like last time we were just talking and now you're trying to get me to give you 25 grand, right?
Right.
So that's what you want to avoid. And most people get into that because they don't know how to do what needs to be done, which is just the conversation. And I always ask questions like this. Hey, Mary, I don't know if this would work or not, but I've got this thought playing around my mind. It's like really loose. But when you said, you have this wall, I don't know, is there a way we could partner on that or something? Like I don't provide the whole solution. I just say, you mentioned that you've got this wall, and that's when they're like, oh, every store in the entire world in our company has a wall.
Wow.
Wow. I don't know what, like, it's just, my brain is just going around this, like, and then they just started filling in the gaps. We could do this,
Wow.
we could do this, we could do this. It was, whew,
And it's coming from them. See, that's the
exactly.
key. Instead of you coming at them, you're working with them and it's
Right.
coming from them. So it's organic.
Exactly, because I don't know about their wall. I just heard about it now. I don't know, do things stay on there for a year? Do they swap it out every week? Who decides what goes on the wall? How do you market your wall? So if I started putting out all these ideas, again, they go back into that granola bar example, thinking, well, we have what stays on the wall has to be there 6 months, and we have to get board approval, and we have to, go through this and this and this process. So that's why the more you can plant your idea as a question, then you have the opportunity, to,
Yeah.
right? So with
No.
through the show, you're like, wow, I'm just so interested. We've both got this very similar audience, and we're both on this mission to change the world and to help
Mhm.
people. And I'm just wondering, like, where is there possibility for us to somehow create some synergies with what we're doing? Because who
Yeah.
knows what they might have in mind,
That's
right?
great. That's really great. I like that.
They might say
Um,
to Aaron, like, do you want to co-host the one that we do specific to stroke survivors? Or could you take that piece? Or could we co-brand a weekly, one of those 4 days a week that you do? Could we co-brand? Who knows what
yeah.
they want? But,
Very
but,
good.
you know, um, and then there's other idea, like you can say things like, oh, there's so many ideas that I have. Like Aaron just gets such great content on his discussions. Like, I don't know, is there a way that we could take some of our content from our interviews and have you run those on your website as blogs,
As what? As what?
or articles?
Yeah. Aaron told me, and I didn't get to watch it. I've never heard anyone doing this before. He's like breaking the ground. He just interviewed a stroke survivor who has everything paralyzed except her eyes. She
Wow.
can't even speak. So someone said, well, how did you have an interview? Her husband has a board with all the letters and she moves her eyes and focuses on different letters. And they put
Wow.
can you imagine this? She was a supermodel who had been in a car accident.
Wow.
So, I mean, I get the goosebumps. It's
What a
really deep.
story of love and devotion, too. Hey?
Yeah, yeah. So I haven't even seen it, but I heard it was very moving. I mean, I've
Wow.
never heard of anyone interviewing someone who can't
Yeah.
speak. So the
Right.
husband is speaking for her as she moves her eyes. And he said she's smiling and laughing. Isn't that
Wow.
amazing?
Amazing. Wow.
So, and I really had no idea how do you price something like this. Aaron, I'm thinking Aaron isn't even taking any money.
Mhm.
But
Well,
he's a
and I wouldn't even
nonprofit.
be thinking about pricing it yet because, like, you're looking at one little piece. So, what you want to do is sell a pizza. But if you're looking at pricing just this one little piece, like all we know is, so you're trying to sell a slice of a pizza instead of the whole pizza.
Right, right.
Right? So
I
I
would,
wouldn't even be thinking about pricing yet because we don't even know what they're interested in. So what are we pricing? Is with the granola bar example, are we pricing like the plenty pack, or are we pricing one granola, or is it like a little piece that we broke off, right?
right.
So
Oh,
I would, yeah. So I always say take your head out of money right now. It's a non-issue right now because you can't start thinking about pricing and money until you learn enough about them to start co-creating it. So like, and what happens is we start looking at all the little one-offs. this slice, and then on this slice, we're going to add a bit of pepperoni. So we got 2 slices, one with pepperoni. What's that going to come to? Instead of, we've got this beautiful oversized pizza that's actually coming in a velvet box with an award and some wine. And we're creating that because they told us they wanted it. So what you want to do with sponsorship is, I never, like with this company that I had calls from November till March when the contract came through, we didn't talk about money until February-ish.
Wow.
And so that's when we started looking at what it's going to cost. And then the conversation was, the proposal we sent them was already what we talked about on the call. So there was no like, yeah. And then we actually had to ask more because we forgot to put 2 things in there that we had talked about on the call, and it's like, oops. So we had to go back and say, oh, we missed 2 things that were really important to you. We added more money to the proposal. But that only happened. Now, if we had our original ask to them, just so you know, our original ask was going to be about $20,000.
Oh my gosh. So it's like what, quadrupled or quintupled or something.
Right. Because we kept talking to them. We were going after 1 piece of pizza. And what we've done is we've created a custom gourmet pizza with them together.
Wow. Really, Charmaine, I would think, as far as your involvement, except you don't want to be spending, time for 12, 14 sessions without pay, but there must be some way that you could, I don't know, could step in as a consultant or something.
Probably the better way to work with me was probably just to have Aaron can bring me in to have a couple power hour calls with him and you, and I can help you prepare for the meetings, and then you report back to me what happened, and I'll show you how I want you to take the notes. Like there's a very specific way of taking notes, so that I can hear the language that the sponsor, because often what we do when we take notes, we paraphrase what they say, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. One of the sponsors we were on the call with this week, the word that they used repeatedly was amplify. We want to amplify your efforts. We want to amplify what you're already doing. We want to amplify and support your marketing. So this word came up over and over again. So I didn't write down, they want to help with marketing, because that's a paraphrase, right? I wrote amplify with an underline, because anything I use with them in future is going to have that word in it.
Right, because that's their language. I get it totally.
Yeah. So, and then, when you eventually talk about money, you have that information to say, we talked about a couple of options. And one of the things that was really important for you is to find ways to be able to amplify easily what it is that we're already doing. So things don't need to always be recreated, but we can advance what's already created. So there's a couple of options, and this one looks like this, but the one that I think more closely matches what was important to you is this. And that's like the more expensive version, right? That's the gourmet pizza. This is just the 3 items on the pizza. And so, and both have all slices. It's a full pizza, but this one is the better option, and it addresses their needs. But that's not going to come until we have many calls together, because what'll happen is if we start trying to it's sort of like a puzzle. If we start trying to plug all the pieces in and just make them fit, what happens is the conversation ends up getting stalled, because it's like we're trying to put that puzzle piece in and instead of letting it organically take place by being open and not being so attached to the dollar amount.
The outcome, right.
Yeah.
I see.
And I mean, even asking questions like, with your show, what kind of impact are you wanting to make? And, so is there a goal of the show to bring people to their website? Is the goal of the show to get more listeners so they can sell to higher level sponsors? It's really important to know what their reason was for having a show. They've never had one before. Right?
Exactly.
Is it because they needed to find a way to engage with people online? And then, Aaron's already doing that really well. He's been doing that long before COVID became a thing.
Right.
right? So he has experience of working pre-COVID and during COVID. And I expect from watching Aaron and seeing the longevity of his show, he already set those wheels in motion long before COVID became a thing. So there was not a lot of pivoting he had to do, right? So he's got
Exactly.
a system and process set up. And so I think the key for this call is going to be really open dialogue, but somehow I would plant early on something like, I was really excited to get your email and open up this line of communication, and you, from reading the email that you had sent, it sounded like you were interested in having this conversation as well, and I wasn't sure if there were questions or ideas or anything that you had already had from just the email communication that we wanted to address, or and if not, like, I'd love to hear more about your brand and the show that you're doing.
Perfect. So at this point, as far as working with you,
Mm-hmm.
the way you could see it is if Aaron and I wanted to have a power hour and we
Yeah.
would pay you for the power hour rather than hiring you
Yeah.
to come in and sit there with the client and be the, I don't want to say negotiator in front of them, but
Right.
to be the consultant, the collaborative, the sponsorship consultant.
Yeah.
Because then
Yeah.
then it looks funny if you're being brought in from the outside. Is that what you're
Well,
thinking?
not always, because I've sat in some with my other clients, but the thing that happens is if I can't make the next 3 meetings, for example,
Oh, I see.
then it's like weird that I pop in and I pop out. For me to be able to participate fully, there's a lot of work I would have to do to understand Aaron's brand fully, to understand their brand. So there's a lot of out of meeting work that I would have to do. And ultimately, who do they want the relationship with? Aaron. So it makes great sense to have you on. I just know my schedule that over the next 6 months, for example, that my getting my time, like if they said, oh, next Tuesday at noon, it's like, oh, sorry, I'm booked. Oh, Thursday I'm booked. Oh, so then it starts to look bad on Aaron if you have people in the meeting that can't make the future meeting. So I don't want that to happen for you guys, but I know my schedule right now it's like
Right.
quite tricky over the next 6 months. But
Yeah.
the other reason, and I've also had it where people have brought us in towards the end. So you guys are doing the relationship building piece. And then you can say, we've brought in one of our team members, Charmaine. She's really good at helping kind of create the logistics plans and kind of the deliverables, so we can make sure that everything we're committing to do together on our end is actually, we create traction on that for you. And so we brought her in to support us on this piece as we kind of pull it all together. And so there's that can sometimes help, and you bring someone in towards the end. And then there's like, that's the way I think is better, is to because a lot of the next few calls might just be really purely a couple of calls, and this will probably move way faster than corporate. You got to remember, with corporate, they're having like hundreds of people wanting sponsorship for them, right, from them. So your work with this group will probably move faster than what we see with the sponsors that I was describing that we're dealing with, because they're just getting pitched by hundreds of people every day, for corporate sponsorship dollars. Whereas this group that you're meeting with may not be. But yeah, it's really about finding out what they're doing, who their audience is. Pete, I was really inspired to see that you were interested in meeting with us. Love to learn more about that. So let them just answer why they wanted to meet with you.
Okay, now that sounds great.
Yeah.
So you're not do you have a nonprofit division of your company, or no?
Not of Raise a Dream, but I do have my own charity related to Toby, the dog.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I wondered, like, when you get sponsors, it doesn't have to be for your nonprofit, it's for your for-profit.
Well, that might be one of the things that would get talked about is, if they're going to give corporate sponsorship dollars or sponsorship dollars, they probably have to give it to a nonprofit, because
right, they're a nonprofit.
They're a nonprofit. I don't think they could. Yeah. So I'm thinking, I don't know.
When you work with companies to sponsor you, I would think they're typically for-profit companies who are sponsoring, you're not getting money from a nonprofit to underwrite something of yours.
We have had
Or-
in past where we've had a company that has to move their money through a charity. So the and then the check actually comes from the charity, but it came from a third party. We've
Oh,
had that.
yeah.
But that's not very common. I would say a lot of the times that I'm dealing with sponsorship, it's coming actually from their marketing budget. So it's not coming from their philanthropic budget. Like most big companies have two arms of money, philanthropic
Right.
that goes to charities and nonprofits, and then marketing spends, which is where I've been mostly when they're spending their
Yeah.
marketing dollars on sponsorship with us for whatever it's going to be for. Yeah.
Can I just ask you one other question that's separate from Erin's, but I've been thinking about working on writing children's stories of nonprofit leaders or so I would think it would be possible for me to get sponsorship dollars that would go towards a nonprofit. Actually, this is sort of like Erin too, where that I could also get paid. Right? I mean, you could still do that, but I would still need to identify the right match.
Yeah.
And then go through the whole process of building the relationship.
Yeah.
And then just because, I like, for instance, did you meet Spark? I'm trying to remember if you met Elise Bridges.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're still in conversation.
Yeah.
And she's got so much going for her. And she's just so amazing.
She's a real firefly, isn't she?
She is.
She is. She's just a spark of energy, that one.
I know. So I talked to her about, wouldn't it be great to put your story into a children's format? She's all about eradicating bullying and helping prevent youth suicide.
Yep.
So she said, and her ribbons have already reached over 50 million people around the world.
It's incredible.
Isn't it? And she's just like a ball of love. Like you want to be around her.
I know. She's so positive.
Sparky,
Yeah.
So she said, I think it wouldn't be hard to get sponsors. Her goal now is 1 billion people honored before the end of 2021.
Wow.
Is that something?
But see, there's ways you could collaborate with her. So for example, like with a book, there's so many ways that you can bring sponsorship in. Like you could have sponsors each pay $5,000 to feature one of their employees' children's stories in your book.
But would the employees then have to have something to do with the blue ribbon?
Well, here's where it gets interesting. So then what happens is, so these are stories of leadership for children. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, so the thought was that I would highlight, Sparky could be one of the chapters. I would highlight people making a difference.
Yeah.
And so one thought was, not only is Elise Sparky making a difference, but the people who've been touched by the blue ribbons have had their lives transformed. Some, stop wanting to kill themselves. So I said I could see that could be part of this book. It could be her story and other stories. And you're saying these sponsors could have.
So sponsors could actually sponsor someone in their community. So you could go to a local bank and say for $10,000 or $5,000 or whatever the amount is, you can sponsor one of your community impact difference makers in your community. This will give them a chapter in the book. And we will also, with the chapter, give 1,000 blue ribbons to your company to be able to bring in this mission of helping around and honoring people who've made a difference in your world. So you're getting paid so $5,000 times 15, if you had 15 stories in there, I would even go more, like even like $7,500 or $10,000, and it gives them maybe 100 books. They pay you $10,000 to have one of the local stories, one of the difference makers in their community. Those books can also be, like you can say they're going to get 100 books, 50 for you, 50 for the person whose story we wrote for you. We're going to mention your company in the back of the book, and we're going to give you 1,000 ribbons so that you can honor people who are making a difference. And then that way you have tracking. We had 15 people in the book. We gave out 1,000 ribbons to each of them. That's 15,000 ribbons that were sort of given to the world. 15,000 people recognized. And then you've just made, you know, $115,000 or $100,000 to produce the book, do the interviews, do all the marketing and all of that. So, and then the sponsor is being recognized in a book
Right, and then, I mean,
and
the
on your
gifting,
show, because you can feature
that's
you can
true.
feature all 15 people on your show, and you can bring in the CEO of the company that sponsored that community member. And you know, Mary, I don't know if you've met Bob, the guy that owns the bank, but you know, I wanted to bring you both on this conversation today because Bob, you know, determined that you were the difference maker in the community. And let's talk about this and get Bob talking about the person whose story that you know was included in the book, the person who you wrote about gets talked about. What's your plans for these blue ribbons? You know, how are you going to honor people? So you're actually, so now the company that paid money to have somebody's story in the book, and they have a little bit of information about their business in the back, and now they've got this radio show or TV, you know, video or radio, whatever you're going to do, that then becomes a product that they can be promoted. You can do a press release in each community announcing that you know, there's a difference maker in Chicago being supported by blah blah Bob at the blah 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 bank. And what the company is paying for is what the company is paying for is the marketing that you're bringing the company by putting that person in the book. So
Yeah,
they're getting
wow.
marketed. Yeah,
You're a genius. That's so wonderful. So that way Sparky could have her story in there too, because she's the root
exactly.
of the whole thing.
So she's story number one. Exactly. And then you ask each person a question. Like you get Sparky to give you 2 questions that she wants to, like, how do you honor people and tell them they've made a difference? And so every person in this, what you can do is, I mean, you can even bring the CEO of the company in, and another piece at the beginning of Mary's chapter, and Mary is being sponsored by Bob the Bank. At the beginning of Mary's chapter, there's a beautiful quote by Bob.
Oh,
Right? You know how there's always, sometimes there's a
yeah.
quote at the top of the chapter 3, and then there's a little quote, Bob, blah, 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 bank. And then there's Mary's chapter, right? And at the end, there's information about Mary. And at the back of the book, there's information about the blah, blah, blah bank with Bob, and a special note for why they chose Mary as a difference maker in their community.
Oh, that's beautiful. And like, what, there would be like 15 or 20 stories or something like
Sure, you
that?
could have 15 or 20 stories, and if each one was paying, you know, $10,000 or whatever to have the story featured, and what are they paying for?
Well,
Like, so
part of
you,
it I was thinking part of it could also be considered a donation, because I wanted this book to also be a fundraiser for
right,
Blue Ribbons Worldwide. I wasn't going to
perfect.
take all the money for me, you know.
Yeah.
So
Well, and there's a lot of costs with putting a book together and
yeah,
marketing a book and giving them printed copies. Like there's cost to that, right? You know,
right.
so for example, if you were going to give each of them, let me just get my calculator here. If you were going to give each company um, who gives books, if you gave each company 100 books and you're paying
Well, that's a lot of
$6 per
books.
books, that's like almost $1,000
That's
just
a
for the
lot
book,
of books to
right?
give. I don't know if you have to give so
Or you
many.
or you give 50 or
50,
25,
yeah.
you know, or 25, and then they can order them at discount prices. Um, and then you do the radio interview with them, and you can turn their radio, get it transcribed and turn that radio interview into a 3-part blog series that features that company.
Yeah, I have it as a
Um,
video interview, which would mean that it could be video,
right.
audio, and print.
Yeah,
You could split it up.
exactly. So that's what you want to do. So what you're giving them is you're recognized in the book. We're going to have a CEO quote at the start of the chapter that you have sponsored. So you're actually in the book twice, right? We're going to
Yeah.
give you a TV interview with the person that you sponsored. We're going to have you voice your quote that you put in the book, and we're going to play that at the end of the show. Here, you know, as we close today, here's a special message from Bob. So it's like your little infomercial that you can actually cut and paste and just use that as audio. And then we're going to turn your interview into a 3-part blog series. We're going to give it to you on audio and video. And please know that your sponsorship of this difference maker in your community also includes a donation that we will make back to the Blue Ribbon campaign. And we're going to give you 500 ribbons to be able to honor people in your organization and in your community.
That's brilliant. Well, I will be happy to pay you back if I get this all together.
So that's, and $10,000 is not a lot of money. Like, here's what I pitched to United Way years ago, and I just haven't gotten time to do this. So I went to, United Way in the community I used to live, every year they do a project called the Faces of at the Community. And they pick 100 people in the community. And so in the community, there was this massive wall at the United Way office with 100 faces. Each of the 100 faces were promoted in the media. And I said to them, you've got 3 books here. Like, you've got 100 faces for 2020. It was 2019. I was there. And I said, like, these 100 faces, why don't you turn this into a book of 100, and each of them gets their own like half page or a full page, where they write about, why they were chosen as one of the faces of the community, right? And then you get sponsors to sponsor that. Each of those 100 people costs, I don't know, $5,000 to have them in the book. And now United Way has just raised, $500,000, right?
Oh,
and then they go and sell the books as a fundraiser all year long. And then next year, version 2 comes out.
That's brilliant. So the United Way picks the people who are honored.
Yep.
And then they have the opportunity to be in the book. But you said they're paying, who's paying the $5,000 to be in the book? The people are paying?
No, sponsors, because sponsors always support. So this could be part of the United Way fundraising campaign.
Oh, sponsors would pay for each of the people in the book.
Yep.
And the people would be honored, and the sponsors would be honored.
Yep.
And then the money could go towards the United Way.
Mm-hmm. So you can do a variation of that, where you can say, I want to do this book of difference makers, and I actually want to choose difference makers from your local nonprofit organizations in your community. And then what you can do is say, we can also work with your community to have this book become a fundraiser for that agency, for the United Way, for, your local community foundation, for your local Seroptimist or Rotary Club. They can buy the books in bulk just at a little bit over cost from me, and then use them as fundraisers all year long.
Wow, that's fantastic. And have you done that? Did you say?
No, and I just too busy to put it together. So
yeah, because it would take time to get all these people and get all the sponsors for each of the communities. But the thing is, Elise already has tons of contacts. I mean, one of her contacts, I'm sure you've heard this name, Stedman Graham.
Yeah, I know. That's how I met Elise, was through the K's group in San Diego. So I met her and Stedman there.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she has a lot of people who are very well connected anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you so much. This is very helpful. I'm so glad we're recording this, because I couldn't keep up with writing fast enough.
Let me know when you have your meeting on Tuesday. Let me know if you need to touch base after, but just keep this as an introduction. This is the first time you're meeting with them. It's a chance for them to get to know you, chance for them to get to know Erin, chance for you to get to know them. And just, this is conversation. Right. And then it's always before the time is closing. Just has been so valuable to get together. My ideas are just like swimming in my head right now. I'd love to book a call right now so we can keep this dialogue open. You've given me lots to think about, and there's been some incredible ideas, and I'd love to keep the momentum up. And so book the call right then before you hang up.
For a second call.
Yeah, always the goal of call number 1 is always just to get call number 2.
That's great. And actually, as we were talking about the book, that could certainly be an idea too for Erin's group.
I was just going to say, Erin has like multiple books in him of all the interviews he's ever done. Right. And so if you would have
the money to, because I was saying, even if
a sponsor could do that, right? A sponsor could work with him, his charity, and their charity, to put together the 50 Faces of Heart and Stroke. And it could be interviews from Erin's group and interviews from Heart and Stroke. And the money that is raised from the book sales is split 50-50 between those two charities. So, I mean, there's so many things that could
Oh,
happen,
we
right?
have to give a big something to Charmaine Hammond at Raise a Dream for us. I
Well,
love that. I mean,
and you've published books. You are,
yeah,
you have experience with this.
yeah.
So,
You know why
yeah.
I'm very aligned, besides the fact of Roland passing away. You know, my mother passed away from a heart attack, and it was very
Ah,
sudden, very drastic. And then our son had a stroke.
oh,
So
so
that
it's a
was
really
5
important
years
topic
ago.
to you.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's very, and I have done a lot of just personal, asking for money for the Heart
Mhm,
Association when I get their notice because of my mother's passing,
mhm. Yeah.
and it was so frustrating. My father felt so guilty because he was a retired doctor and he didn't notice the signs.
Wow.
And they, when you'd think doctor,
Yeah.
but her signs were only extreme fatigue and breathlessness for no reason. Those were the,
Wow.
so, you know, that's
Mm,
why I'm very committed to helping his group too,
yeah.
because I have a personal stake in
And
that.
that's important for you to share. Like, I think that kind of, like,
Mm,
just say, I'm so honored to be on this call today. I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a really big fan of your organization. I'm a really big fan of the work that Erin is doing. And the reason why is, and then you share, I had a
uh,
dear friend, Roland, who
right,
I felt compelled to get his story out after he passed. And also personally, I've been infected,
right, right,
through my mom and our son. And so, your mission, the mission of Erin, is really deeply important to me.
right. Thank you.
Yeah.
You are so smart. I'm so honored. Did I honor you with the blue ribbon?
I believe you did a while ago. Yes, you
Okay,
did.
because I would love to can I honor you again.
Sure, you
I
can.
gotta, I think do I have your, so if you go to blueribbons.org, you get 10
Yes.
free blue ribbons. I can mail
Yep.
you some, I mean,
Aw,
this
thank
is,
you.
I would love to honor you if you accept my gift.
I do.
All right, so
Yes.
this is what it looks like. I have a blue ribbon. I ordered 100 that says
Yeah.
who I am makes a difference.
Aw,
And I want to honor you, Charmaine. You are making a huge difference, not only to me, but to the world. And
aw.
I really appreciate your time, your generosity, your kindness, your compassion, and helping make a bigger difference so that we can honor more people and make this a kinder, more loving world. You're doing so many good things.
Thank
So
you.
may I place this on you virtually?
You can,
Okay, so this
please.
goes above. Do you have any of
Okay.
these yet? I'm going to get you some. So you don't have them yet. So it goes above your
Sure.
heart.
Okay.
The ribbon is pointed upwards towards making
Okay.
all your dreams come true. See
Oh,
how it fits?
awesome.
And so
Yep.
that's what this ribbon's about. There are little
Okay.
cheerleaders at the end of the
Yep.
ribbon, jumping for joy for your dreams.
Nice.
I'm going to take the spark from my heart and I'm going to ignite your dreams coming true with the sound of bing.
Love
And
it.
that is to make your dreams come true now.
That's awesome.
And then I would give you two more, one that you would use to honor someone else, and the third to give to that person to pass it on.
Pass it on forward. Excellent.
What is it
Thank
now?
you.
Do I have your address?
I'll just pop it over an email to you right away.
All right, I would like to send that, and you can also go, as I said, and get 10.
Yes.
It's such an honor. I'm so
That's
grateful
so
to know
nice.
you.
That was
Did that make you feel okay? Could you feel
yes,
my
I could.
authenticity?
Yes, yes.
I don't even know how to express how much I am
Aw,
grateful for.
aw.
So
Well,
please
I
give your
can't wait to
address.
hear how Tuesday goes for you and Aaron.
Yeah, thank you. This has been a very major week, and Tuesday will be great. I did my first
Yeah.
webinar by myself on Friday, and I was so nervous I did not publicize it because I'm not used to being the only one speaking.
Right.
And so, and I actually have not done PowerPoint that much by myself.
Yeah.
But I joined this group called the Max Community, and they will help people with all components of their business. And so they said, fine, you can, be a founding member. I didn't pay money. And they said, we'd like to have you featured as a webinar and someone who could help people with their stories. So I was doing an interview, a very challenging technical interview at noon my time, and at 2:00 the webinar. And
Wow.
afterwards I was exhausted. It went
Yep.
fine, but I was very nervous.
Well, you took the plunge.
I took the plunge.
You took the plunge. Way to go, Lynn.
So thank you. It went very well, but everything is always a new thing at one point, right?
Yeah. And then you're a pro at it. Look, when you
Yeah.
started your show, it was new and now it's like second nature. You can do
Yeah,
it with your
that's
eyes
true.
closed, right?
Well, not quite, but yeah.
Squinting.
It's good. Yeah, right. Yeah, thank you.
All right,
well,
my friend.